Okay, rulers, settle down. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get singles for all your Force of Will and other trading card games, as well as these amazing patrons. Special thanks to guest lecturer member Vite Ramen. Thank you for your support. Class is in session.
We gotta get new force.
Hey there, rulers! Hey there, rulers! Welcome back after a long week of Force of Will to Office Hours. But if you still have some questions, you've come to the right place because it's your favorite ever live Force of Will podcast, and you got us. I'm DMO73, and the rest of the Ruler School Force, I guess, joined by Paul Reisman.
Paul Reisman.
And Mike Rance.
Mike Rance.
I think that was our smoothest yet most terrible intro.
It was terrible.
Just want to say
for hours.
Just want to say thank you all so much for being here. We're super excited to be hanging out with you all today. If you like what we're doing, we make you laugh, we make you smile, consider supporting the channel by clicking that join button down below. Get access to all kinds of cool perks like the emote and even helping us get to unlock the new emote. As you can see, we're 21 away from Brad. We're also, obviously, this coming weekend is the GP weekend, and if you want to be able to participate in the chat, if you can't show up, you have to be a member to do it. The GP itself will not be paywalled. You can still watch the GP live as it happens. You just won't be able to talk to us, and we like to talk to you. So consider clicking that join button and supporting us. That being said, we're glad you're here, and at least if you want to do it, is give us a like and a subscribe. We'd appreciate it. Helps feed the algorithm so that more people can learn about this glorious game. So with that, guys, new cluster just got announced. Yeah. New cluster.
It's time to dual cluster.
Yeah, it's the dual. It's the dual cluster.
Based on Yu-Gi-Oh.
It's not DUEL cluster.
Based on the card game.
We're going back to New Valhalla. We got a lot of information to break down for you tonight. We're going to share our thoughts as we go through. So dual cluster coming out at the end of November, November 26th, is the expected release date.
I give thanks for going back to New Valhalla.
Yeah, so it does look like we're going back to New Valhalla, which makes sense in the sense of the story. The story that hasn't been released yet, coming from the person who knows the story behind the scenes. It makes sense that we're going back to New Valhalla, and I know that some people were initially concerned about the idea of going back to New Valhalla for the return of runes, but have no fear, we have information today that confirms that runes are not going to be a part of it. And that comes in the sense of the two starter decks, which we'll get to in a minute. But I do want to hear these guys' thoughts about the fact that we're going back to New Valhalla. Looks like we're starting out with Loki, Odin, Kaguya, and Nyarlathotep. Boys, what are your thoughts? Paul, why do you have 2 hot dogs? Why do you have 3 hot dogs?
I have 3 hot dogs. I don't know. Like, each one represents one locals that I go to.
You only have 2 logos.
How come you lets you have 2 wieners?
Wrong. I only have 1 locals. I don't know. Just felt like hot dogs tonight. You know, nothing. No reason.
So, anywho, give me your thoughts about going back to New Valhalla, Mike. While Paul's eating, give me your thoughts first.
Yeah, so I also want to just mention to Greg Grumbler with Dual Cluster, do we get back Dual Stones? No, you don't get back the Dual Stones, D-U-A-L. You get the Dual Stones, D-U-E-L. Basically what they're going to do is that if you're playing a Force of Will deck with rulers in it, you lose the game automatically as soon as the game starts. They're very, very well designed. I think it's going to be an excellent thing going forward. We've already seen an enter effect where you lose the game. You might as well put it on the stones.
There you go. There you go.
So,
I like it.
But I'm just very excited, honestly. Obviously, everybody knows that I have massive amounts of post-traumatic stress disorder from the fact that, DBV was a set. So going back to that cluster where that was made with the card that was the newest broken card in Force of Will's history, sitting there on the cover.
I mean, that doesn't really look like perfect Loki. I mean, we know it's Loki, so it's a little bit weird.
Who are you talking about?
Are you talking about? Oh, you're talking about Kaguya. I apologize.
Yeah,
you're
the
right.
best card Force of Will's ever printed in the history of all Force of Will. Can't forget that card. Anyway, the fact that we're getting them back like this is really interesting to me because I don't think we're going to get the same type of big flashy. Well, obviously we're going to get big flashy stuff, but it's not going to be flashy, over the top kind of obtuse mechanics the way that were.
Yeah,
it's a big thing for me where I love I loved the idea of the faith mechanic. It was on 3 cards, and it was trash.
Yeah.
I love the idea of the moons. It was on 2 cards. It was trash. I love the idea of Perfect Loki. Busted. Divinity Infinity. Please never again.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, and then they looked at Hanzo and they're like, what's Green's identity? Ah, yes. Steel, Wind, and Legs on a 7/7.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Gray, we are indeed going back to New Valhalla in the storyline. New Valhalla cluster, like where the high gods are kind of brought back to power and brought back to life, is in the miniature world of New Valhalla, because actual Valhalla legitimately got destroyed. So there is no like original Valhalla anymore. It is purely just New Valhalla. So that's where we're going back to.
It's only available outside of the United States. Anyway.
Correct. Paul, what about you?
I guess since this is not a mukbang podcast, I should probably give my ideas. I like this idea,
but I'm drinking some quality craft beer that I got while I was up in Boston this weekend.
Pinky out.
So back to New Valhalla. Thoughts?
So we're going back to New Valhalla. I like the idea potentially of the fact that, I mean, honestly, frankly, I don't know, but I really do like the idea that we're getting structure decks. Because I know like that was a big miss from
trying to
from last.
It focused again on me. That's great. Anyway.
Every pre-release kit gets an alternate souls acrylic standee.
Yeah.
So there
you
go.
Little crossover.
Multiple game promotions.
This
November 19th. So that is saying November 26th, so right after our Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Wow.
What am I thankful for?
Happy Thanksgiving.
What am I thankful for? New Force of Will set. To me, so I'm going to go over the card details for the set here in just a minute, and then we're going to dive into the starter decks, because I think there's a lot to unpack with the starters. For me, the thing that I'm really excited about is the fact that this, to me, is signaling that the high gods from DBV are probably going to be our rulers from throughout this cluster. So we're starting with 4 of them. We have Kaguya, who is the high god for the Hanzo people, for the cats. We have Nyarlathotep, who is the high god of like the Egyptian theme. Of Atum is the world that was created. We have Odin, who is the high god of like the Valkyries. We have Perfect Loki, who is the high god of all the fairy tales, and also just Perfect Loki. And then we also, the other ones we had were Stan, who we've just seen in this past set. He's been distracted and had to pull back to the outer world. So that'll be, I mean, that makes sense that he might not make another appearance. We have Athenia is one of the high gods. So back to like Force of Will now, Grim to now have literally never had an Athenia ruler, and she has existed as a ruler beforehand, so that's pretty cool. Then you have like Genshi Tenshon, who is that like the feudal ice fire high god, and then you had Shiva, who is the Chimimi's high god. Obviously, this also means that we're probably getting a new Alice ruler, and sign me the heck up for that. It also probably means that Deus Ex Machina is probably going to be a ruler in this cluster, which means we're going back to machines, which is always a fan favorite for getting back to machines. So the fact that we're seeing these like high god resonators, like we didn't really get to explore them very much outside of like, hey, some of these resonators are awesome and amazing and busted, and some of these resonators are garbage. Like that was really all we had of them. Is like little.
Some of them were Kaguya, some of them were Perfect Loki, and then some of them were Genshi Tenson.
Yeah,
who was legitimately
terrible.
The worst.
But the fact that we're getting to explore those characters, especially pulling from the Valhalla like lore back into rulers for this generation of Force of Will, I think is very, very cool. And then. So like I'm very excited for that. I'm also really excited about this kind of new mechanic that they're kind of talking about. So before we get into that, let's talk about what we know so far. This is coming from ICV2. It's 93 brand new cards, 42 normals, 22 rares. So we're down from 29. 15 super rares. That's on point. Still 5 Marvel rares, 4 total ruler/J rulers, 5 basic stones, 4 coins, 3 types of tokens, which signals to us that there's some kind of token generation in the set, and 12 art life counter cards.
Great.
Yeah, life counter cards. Also, booster boxes will have a PR card as usual. And then, like Paul said, there is a cross promotion with alternate souls for the pre-release kits, you get a Welser, like an alt art Epic of the Dragon Lord Welser skin figurine in every single pre-release kit, which is great because I really like that Welser design.
Ooh.
So, and then let's talk about the starter decks. I'm going to pull that starter deck image up here, the first one. So we've got two. There's the starter deck Tails deck, which is the Nyarlathotep deck. I really like, just artwork-wise, that this is leaning back heavier on the Little Red Riding Hood aesthetic, which to me has always been really the interesting part of Nyarlathotep. It's been like this duality of like she's Little Red Riding Hood, but she's not, and like fairy tales. So like gotta love that. So cool to see her brought back. I like the fact that her hat still has like the pointy ears of like the Wolf Girl like callback. Which I think is pretty cool. And then we have Odin for the villains deck. So we have Tails and villains. And so to go into this, there's a new mechanic, a new card type called Orders, and a new keyword abilities that we're going to have brought back. This is coming from the ICV2. We don't know what the orders are, but we will say is that they are somehow in the main deck, because each of these starter decks is 10 playsets of it's 10 unique cards, a playset of all of them, the ruler, the stones, a life counter like art card, some life counter art cards to like help you kind of get track and getting used to the game if you need it. You shouldn't, but you could. And then a will coin card inside the starter deck, so that's pretty cool, right? And a playmat and everything else. It was also said that 8 of the 10 of each of the starter decks are also in the set. So 8 of the cards in the 8 of the unique cards in the villains deck and 8 of the unique cards in the main deck of the Tails deck are also in Game of Gods. So this is very similar to old school Faria Melgus, which is where we had Lancelot and Guinevere, and then Percival and Gawain were exclusive to the starters, but then everything else was in the main set.
Similar also to
Until they got reprinted, yeah.
Yeah, they got reprinted later,
Sure.
but like out the gate they were.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
similar
exactly.
thing to how they kind of did in Ray Cluster. Like we have the cards in the starter decks, and then same cards in main set. Yeah,
and
so
then
it's
also
not something we haven't seen
so
before.
the question becomes so that's just good to know and good for people to kind of understand. It brings up the question of whether or not the rulers themselves are also in the main deck. That being said, back in Alice Cluster, the rulers were in the main set alongside the Melgus Faria starter decks. They were alternate art. So if you bought the starters and then you got the set, it was just alternate art, which was great. So the hope is that we might be seeing a rehash of that, which I think is excellent, because what this does is it creates a space where you have twofold. One, based on what those 2 exclusive cards might be, competitive players might not need to buy starter decks, because the rulers will probably also be in the main deck, or in the like main set, most likely. So great, which means the starter decks are primarily geared towards newer players. 2, this means that again, the ease of access for new players is even better, because you have this $20 card that enters you, and then you're already getting a taste of what cards are in packs. So like there's a natural flow from the starter deck into buying the box. 3rd, it also means that stores who run out of starter decks, who hopefully they don't, hopefully the print run considers, stores can use boxes to build starters. And that is huge. That's very huge. That's a really big thing, to be able to say like, hey, we found some very cool replacements for these 2 exclusive starter deck cards that really work well with these 2 rulers. We're out of Tails decks. Here's a Tails deck that you can pick up because we pulled some extra Nyarlathoteps. It also means local players like me who buy a bunch of boxes can start just building like basic little Tails decks, basic little villains decks for people to try out. I know one of the things that I'm planning on doing for our locals, I already talked to Odyssey about it, is I'm just going to buy a case of each of these starters and have them paid for so that new players coming into our shop can literally just pick up a starter deck for free. So, like, but like even beyond that, if you're just buying boxes, you can do something similar with your loose change, with your, like your loose cards, which I think is huge. So really, really awesome. So what we can tell, like,
Also,
go ahead.
Also, hopefully alternative art, which is what we were hoping for before. But then it doesn't sound like there's going to be hollows in these sets.
We don't know.
Based on what I'm reading here, there's no hollows. I'm sorry, in like the Tails decks and the villains decks.
We don't know.
It's not going to be like a hollow.
There might.
There may or may not be.
We don't know.
We've seen
if they're in the set, they are for sure going to be coming full art.
Yes.
So value. So don't forget that you can get a full art starter deck, which is pretty nice.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Mike.
Without having to buy 4 starter decks.
Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking was that I feel like they might follow suit with what they've done previously with the starter decks, where it's like 1 full art and then like 3 non-full arts for each of the playsets. Because if they do the same thing, then it's like, even if you don't get alternate arts, you're guaranteed a full art of one of the commons of the set, if that's even the case. So there's a lot of cool stuff that happens with that.
Yeah. So really, really cool. And like I said, what we can tell from the makeup of the starters is we can make up that there is not any kind of extra deck mechanic, because it's 40 main deck cards plus your stones plus your ruler, and that's it. So we can show with evidence, hitting my microphone, we can show with evidence that there is no extra deck mechanic. So we are once again going into another cluster of no extra decks. Praise be. Praise be to going back to New Valhalla.
And they're still maintaining that idea of the runes, where like I remember when like the set was first announced and they gave us that website and they were like, we were trying to give runes out as like this, the rulers are ordering their troops,
yes,
right, to do the thing. So that's why we're not going to give them abilities on their front side. They're maintaining that same idea by giving you order cards, whatever those might be.
Potentially, yeah, based on what those end up being, which is very, very cool.
I mean, I imagine there's something kind of like sword art or mage art or something like that.
Most likely.
To some degree. Like, but I think that's a really good way of like maintaining that theme and that design space, but also not going and actually making runes again.
Yes, please. Let's never do that ever again. Let's never do that again. I do want to showcase one other piece of artwork here, which is the pre-release playmat, which is dope, because we've had some complaints recently about the way they've approached pre-releases playmats, and this was shown off. This is going to be what the pre-release playmat is. We've got our 4 rulers here: Kaguya, Nyarlathotep, Loki, and Odin on the board here. This playmat is gorgeous. This playmat is absolutely gorgeous. I think this is a great step. It showcases the artwork really nicely. It's very cool to see. This leads me to believe that our rulers are going to have very different artwork on their front and their back. I'm not holding anything to that, but what we've seen before if you've paid attention to the artwork from the past sets, these poster images are typically made by compositing the images from certain cards. Like, this is not one piece of artwork that's making the poster. It's 4 cards worth of artwork that are then composited really nicely to form a nice little composition. So then we can assume that this is 4 unique cards. So then if we're taking the separate art from the pre-release playmat, which is also typically artwork from cards, just composited differently, maybe we're back to seeing two-sided, very different front and backs. Which
possibly. I'm going to make a prediction right now.
You're going to make a prediction.
I'm going to make a prediction. Those are going to be. I'm ready for this.
Okay.
Those are going to be the 4 super rare orders from the set for each of the rulers.
These 4 cards. I'm
assuming those arts will be used specifically for the super rare or even Marvel rare.
God, I hope Marvel orders aren't Marvel rares. I mean, like Marvel Rares still have been holding pretty decent value. We've seen that haven't been too expensive. I know that I think Gary and Full Art is like 28.
Yeah.
So like it's
like 9.
yeah. So it's really not been that bad, which is great.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I got a full play set of Garyans now and it cost nothing.
Yeah, it's been very good. 4 Marvels per box has continued to be like a really solid point. People are getting stuff easily. So no extra deck means more players are not confused by obvious. Yeah, Paul, good point. Absolutely, bud. It means these starter decks are significantly easier to pick up and play, which is wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, I'm very excited about this. This idea of tales or heroes versus villains, so hear me out. So Force of Will throughout, not necessarily, I mean, like kind of a little bit with EDL, a little, has been kind of doing this once per set. We're kind of like taking an old mechanic and kind of breathing life into it in a different way. Like Oborozuki, like +1/+1 counters have been a thing throughout Force of Will's history, but they've never really felt like a core identity. It was just kind of like these cards put +1/+1 counters on things, I guess. Machines kind of did it, right? But then we kind of like breathed new life into it with Oborozuki, and then in set 2, we saw Burn get like revitalized in terms of actually being a mechanic and being an actual deck rather than just like these cards do burn damage. Like, what if we actually built a deck that can burn?
And we saw green get its identity back as being the most overpowered color. It was great.
Shush. And then in set 3, we saw the return of Seal. Like we took Seal from being just text we slapped on cards to being an actual fleshed out mechanic. Please note that I said fleshed out. I didn't say good. I just said fleshed out.
Brad's a good card. Don't listen to him.
Fun deck for sure. But it felt good. It feels
Brad tier 0.
Stop. But then like in set 4, we've got Null. That was a mechanic that once again was never really flushed out. It was just kind of like we slapped Null on some cards and called it a day, but then now we actually have an archetype for it, which seems to function really well. So we're continuing that trend, right? So we're seeing heroes and villains, but we're also going back to New Valhalla. So it has me thinking, and this is kind of next question, right? Going off of those two things, we're going back to New Valhalla, but we're not seeing runes. But like Paul mentioned, orders are kind of like runes, but in the main deck, potentially. But we're also going back to heroes and villains, which is a callback to Lapis Cluster, Echoes of the New World, with the Will of Hope, Will of Despair. So like
it's returning. Let's go.
With that kind of idea, what, or just in general, for the two of you guys, what mechanic or mechanics do you think we might see rehashed, or do you think would be cool to rehash or revisit as we go into those kind of themings?
Like, you had more ideas than I did, because we didn't get a whole ton of like different things going on. So I'm gonna let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that I could see coming back, maybe for like Kaguya, is Torrent, if they're ever going to return to a different kind of thing. Because I don't know, I feel like Kaguya's always been a deck that's based around like kind of like she's traditionally been like a slower control based ruler, and I think having her in the context of Game of Gods, first of all, we haven't had a Kaguya ruler in so long that
K6 run K6.
Yeah, on K6. I think the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is the fact that we're finally getting rulers that in game lore are like legitimately powerful. Like these like all-encompassing beings. Like we got like fallen angels, we got like Satan out of the main board, who was technically a fallen angel, god, high god, whatever. We had that. We've had these characters like Brad's immortal, whatever. Olivia's a mermaid. She's a 10-10 on the backside. Ooh.
Excuse me, she's a 10-12? Thank you very much.
10-12?
You see how little she flips. Anyway.
Often.
Don't lie to me, Paul. Anyway, back to this.
I will come through that
I
screen.
know. But we haven't seen rulers that won a judgment in a very long time. The last set, we had a ruler whose entire purpose of flipping was to say, hey, grab Virgil from the Devil May Cry series and slap him on top of your ruler. That's your ruler now. Congratulations, you win the game. You win the game. Swing for 10. So you get that. But now we're going back to like these cards that are like canonically just like gods just playing games with each other. And I feel like we're going to get like, my only hope for this entire thing is that we get J rulers that you want to flip into. Because I haven't wanted, I've used Judgment as like the last ditch effort where I'm just like, oh yeah, I guess I could just flip Carly and I don't know, she's a 9/9, whatever. I want to feel like my Judgment is like the game ender. I want to feel like, all right, if this thing sticks for a turn, if Odin is on the field as a 15/15, flying, precision, pierce, first strike, Kusanagi Motoko Extreme, I want to feel that.
Yeah, for sure. Josh in the chat brings up an interesting point. The idea of the 2-color pair spells coming back, of like if you control X and Y, that might be pretty cool for sure. 7 luminary. Toby, look at me right now. Look at my face. That's the 7 luminaries are gone, bud. It's over. They've been.
But I want my Lorite reprint.
They've literally been erased from time. So it okay. They gone. It's okay. It's okay.
Have they though?
Toby
They have been.
plays a Jupiter to get more stupider. Ooh.
They have literally been erased from existence. They don't exist anymore.
What you're saying is everyone else can get reincarnated, but not the 7 luminaries?
But they're not wanderers, so they don't matter. We reincarnate wanderers. We don't reincarnate anyone else.
Oh, is that how that works? Got it.
Or the kings.
Well,
we reincarnate the kings, but not these people. They're just minions.
Okay, so first, so we're moving the goalpost. So it was wanderers
and kings
only get Oh wait, that's right. Faria exists, and she's not a wanderer, but now she.
But she is a wanderer. Faria is a wanderer. Priscia is also a wanderer.
Rezard is back.
It's a king.
He's not a wanderer. So.
Yeah, he's a king.
Yeah, so he's back now. So it's like, okay, so it was just wanderers, and now it's kings. Well, why can't it be 7 luminaries? You know, like powerful magic.
Which one is it, Jeremy?
Chants that are 2-color
system, Jeremy.
Chant. Grey Grumpler says I'd like to see chants that are 2-color but work better with
Last
certain
year,
rulers.
Jeremy said he was 29. Now he says he's 30. Which one is it, Jeremy?
I'm 30. I'm 30. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I would really like this.
Last year.
I would really like to see the return to like if your ruler is X, this does this instead. I think that's a mechanic.
I would rather not. I don't like cards like that.
That's fair. I think it'd be cool to explore that space again. It makes me feel it is very nice to know that like with seeing the 4 and seeing I think it's again, let's make assumptions, right? That's always works out well. We're going into heroes versus villains, and we're also going into only 4 rulers. This makes me feel like we've also like as a cluster, we're probably just moving away from tag. We've had tag twice. We've done it. It fit in with the lore, the sages, kind of sages from the history, and now the fallen angels going against the 5 heroes, kind of going in. That's hit its lore spot, and now we're moving to these high gods duking it out. Feels like we're moving away from tag, which is fine with me. Let's get stealth back, but done right. Athenia reprint win. I don't think we're going to see any DBV reprints because I think that would go away from the theming of what we're talking about here with our high gods becoming rulers.
About that though.
About the DBV reprints.
So, okay, just hear this out. Okay, and Kim, look at me. I know you watch this. I know you do. So just look
I don't
at me.
think so, but
Love
okay.
you, Kim, think about it. This is a perfect opportunity to release alternate art Wanderer League promos of the supers that we got in DBV that no one got copies of unless they bought like a crap ton of boxes, and they would go like crazy. And it's a really good way of kicking off your Wanderer format. Just saying,
but they did promos of them with the GPs. The
Not
Uber
Dark
bonus.
Alice.
Yeah, and
Oh,
how
yeah,
many,
Dark
how many
Alice,
people
that's
actually
true.
got those?
That's true.
Like,
That's
think
true,
about
that's
that.
true.
Not many people actually got a perfect Loki or
Dark
an
Alice, one of the
Athenia
best
or...
cards in Wanderer.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
You're
And
not.
then,
You're not
we
wrong.
never got Dark Alice.
That's
Dark
true.
Alice is like hands down one of the best white cards ever printed. That's a one cost. Like it's so
Well,
good.
you could have
Like,
assured
we
that Sense down the
actually
best
need
white card ever printed, and you could have been right.
So like,
that.
let's
Doggy exists.
let's see. So
Legal white cards.
so theoretically, so I'm gonna get speculative again.
Yeah.
Mechanics that I'd like to see back. I really would actually. I think it'd be kind of cool to see a rehash of like the idea of Will of Hope, Will of Despair. Not necessarily like functioning the exact same way, but this idea of like, no, like this is a good guy power. No, this is a bad guy power. Like to kind of like set some ground limitations for like who could make use of certain cards. I think that could be because that also like encourages diversity in terms of what ruler you're running, or it's like, I'm focused on this ruler, but if I use that ruler, I can't use these cards, or am I gonna pick a different ruler so that I can use these cards? Like, it's the idea of encouraging that. It's a way to encourage deck ruler diversity through main set card design, which I really like. We've seen a little bit of that in this set, right? We have cards that are like Prideful Mage, Prideful Mermaid, Prideful Rule, Carlina's Castle, Garion, the Wall, Electo. Like, these are cards that like technically you can run them in anything, but like you really don't want to. It encourages you to push towards a certain ruler. I like that concept a lot, and I would really like to maybe see us kind of explore a similar space, but rather than just, yeah, that card doesn't really work well with this ruler, just like, no, you just can't use that card with this ruler. I think that'd be pretty cool. No, Paul's saying no. He doesn't agree with me, but that's fine.
Oh no. Steven was saying bring back stories.
Yeah, we can bring back stories.
You
the
can't-
story is
And I'm like,
There's no extra
deck.
deck. There's no extra deck. So stop.
Put them in the main board. Put your rune story in the main board. Flip over cards in your main board.
So
just make one ruler in the set, and then have that one ruler able to use stories.
yeah, there you go.
Make a ruler with race story.
There you
Easy.
go. Easy game, easy life. The other thing that I would like to see, so there was this idea that was in New Valhalla. It was explored, and I think there was some. Was it set 3? I think it was set 3 of New Valhalla.
Is Alice just incarnate a story?
No. Yes.
Unfortunate.
Anyway, so because types and races are interchangeable in VOW.
I'm gonna do some research. Hang on.
So put an Alice in your sideboard. That feels real bad. In your story deck.
Alice in my story,
Story deck. So another interesting thing that was explored in set 3 of Valhalla, going back to this idea, was, especially since we're getting to like
story chance. Damn it.
Unfortunate.
I can't break the rules.
So this idea of, we had things that got better the more of a certain kind of stone you controlled. We saw this in fire. We saw this, or they like gained additional symbol skills or something else like that. Going to this idea of like we're having a battle, so this makes me feel like we're starting to get into like wars with like maybe bigger armies or stuff like that. I think that might be a cool mechanic from New Valhalla that really never saw. I think we had like maybe 2 cards in per attribute that had that idea. Thinking like Freya. There was the red kind of rush person. There was the first strike green cat ninja. There was the one that we actually all really liked, which was the bunny for Adam aggro that like got better. So like that was a mechanic from Force. So again, looking at New Valhalla, that was a mechanic that like we just kind of slapped that text on things and we didn't really explore it. So going back to that idea of, you know, what can we explore more now that we're going back to that kind of area. So that might be cool. Overall, though, I'm just really excited to see, to me, with the fact that the high gods are coming into play, it makes me think that we're going to see a lot more flavor connected to their part of New Valhalla. which to me was a very fun part of New Valhalla, right? Kaguya's was the ninja cats and the yokai, like that was really cool theming. And then we had Loki, which was the fairy tales and like like corruption of fairy tales. And then we had the Egyptian theme, like going back to these like realms within was really cool theming. And I am excited to get that more. I'm always been a sucker for archetypes. I've always been a sucker for flavor, and we're about to enter a cluster of we got 10 races. We got 10 like factions of unique entities to be able to play around with. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah,
I can see
go
at
ahead.
least some of these rulers kind of going back to what we had in New Valhalla as far as like their mechanics. So like blue having +2/+2 counters, right? +1/+1 counters getting onto them. I like that idea because then what FOW is doing in that space is saying, we're committed to supporting Wanderer, but we're also gonna add this new stuff back in, which will expand what you can do in Wanderer, but it's also going to be like really solid and well contained within New Frontiers, and not breaking things, but getting us like new toys, right? And I think especially like with knights, that seems really good to me. Getting different, like some of the different characters in that, like the Percival Knight, but like as a different kind of resonator, would be kind of interesting. And then I got to thinking like Chimimis and stuff, and I'm like, just make Fushi dragons good. Just make better dragons.
Bring back the Durgans.
This guy just said make Fushi good. Disgusting.
I did. Like I love the idea of like you want good flips. Okay, flip Fushi, get a good dragon, sit, and you have these Shion flashbacks, right? Like that was like so interesting to me about that ruler, and we just never got anything good. So give me like Genji Tenshon. Hi God. Okay, he can do what Fushi does, but better. Okay, cool. Let's go into that space, right? So those like retroactively support older rulers with the stuff that is like within their world, so to speak, right?
Yeah, and that's the cool thing is like Force of Will's kind of recommitted to Wanderer, so you have to wonder how much, like how proactive were they in thinking about, yes, let's support Wanderer. How are we going to support Wanderer through our base set design when we're going back to New Valhalla? Like, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. So then it becomes the question of how new are the mechanics going to be? Are we going to see a return to those same archetypes in similar kind of fashion, but now we're exploring that space without runes? We're exploring that space with like rulers, with like the orders and stuff, which I think could also be really cool. It was said in the article that it was all new cards, so we can expect to see no more reprints. We've moved on from that world, which is totally great. This to me feels like a really good next step. It really feels like checks a lot of boxes, like you're saying, Paul. This idea of supporting Wanderer by giving new toys to the old rulers without making the same mistakes of what we did back with those old rulers in terms of core mechanical systems from the rune deck and everything else. So I'm for it. I'm absolutely for it. I'm very excited about it.
Jeremy, how upset will you be that if instead of bringing back Alice to be the Zeus surrogate, they just bring back Zeus?
It's not gonna happen. It's most certainly not going to happen. I would be very sad.
I know.
I would put money on that not happening. Let's say that, right?
That sounds very suspicious. But I like it.
So
one thing I do not want to see come into this set, I really don't want to see dual stones, and I'll tell you why. The play space in Rhea Cluster New Valhalla format was so interesting when we didn't have dual stones, and you had to like kind of like stick to your color a little bit.
Until we got the filter boys, until we got the 10 Commandments,
and we got them at the end of the cluster, right? So like, I think.
Bye, Mike.
Whoa. I guess Mike's a dual stone. Tap produces red and tears. I don't know. But the idea of like, okay, we have like a ton of like really good cards in all the sets. They feel like all pretty well supported every color. We have 6 Sage Stone, which can theoretically change your deck into like a multicolored deck. And we have stones that produce multiple colors for certain kinds of things, like Wolfgang Stone makes different will for different demonic worlds. Same with Faria. I'm not going to mention Olivia Stone because the card's just bad. Don't play it.
Whoa, hey!
Like going in.
I want to roll the dice in every game I play.
Moving into this next set, it makes sense to me. Like some rulers have access to multiple colors for their mechanic and can maybe splash a second color, but then just like giving us like more structure.
Yeah, the Valhalla
and some people might
stones.
think that's too linear.
The Valhalla stones were designed to be paired with their ruler, right? Like you had the Stone of Dueling for Isis was designed to be like, you could use this in any deck, technically, very clearly designed to support Isis. I like that idea. I like going back to that. I think I agree with you on the sense of like, if we're gonna get dual stones back in any way, I think we go shocks. Back to like the pain lands, the shock lands, which I think is fine, or the countdown lands. I know people have another moniker for them. I'm choosing to be family friendly and call them countdowns.
The poop bricks.
But I think it's pretty safe to assume out the gate that I'm pretty sure it's safe to assume out the gate, being that we only have. Hold on, I'm gonna sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank you. I think it's pretty safe to assume out again. Let's make assumptions and then be proven wrong. We have 4 rulers. They all very much feel like a very specific color, like even in the packaging design. And also with being the 10, because this is like 10 unique factions, once again, it feels like we're not going to see these like dual color combinations that we saw. Because again, we have only 4 rulers, and now we're back to like individual factions kind of warring out. So it makes me think the Kagi is probably going to be green, Odin's probably going to be white, Nyarlathotep's probably going to be red, Loki's probably going to be blue. Which then goes back to like what faction they were cheering for at the beginning of Valhalla. And then if you just introduce a set with only 4 colors between the rulers, it doesn't make any sense to introduce dual stones into that space. It does, like, from a design space, it doesn't make sense because not only do you not have the 5th color represented, but now you have 4 single color rulers, and then you're going to introduce dual stones into that. Like, that doesn't like line up design wise, like design philosophy wise. So I think it's pretty safe to assume that at least out the gate, we're not going to see dual stones, which is great. I'm totally for it. Bring back, like you said, Paul, the idea of stones that kind of tie to the ruler, support what the ruler wants to be doing, but does give some creativity room. So, yeah. Bring back Bestow with additions. I'd be down for that. That was a cool mechanic. I liked the idea of Bestow.
Yeah, and it kind of makes sense too, because I mean I think there were some like weapons that you could like.
So not gonna lie,
that were like in that lore.
I do want to quickly address a question. Joshua Dark. I wonder which Egyptian god the company is going to make into a J/ruler in their return to New Valhalla. It's Nyarlathotep.
Who's not an Egyptian god.
Who's not an Egyptian god.
For the executive.
Who's not an Egyptian god, but did devour all of the Egyptian gods and steal their power. So,
gotcha.
There you go. Answered your question.
So no slight for the executive producer.
No slight for the executive producer.
My favorite Egyptian
I will say, a lot of people are asking for chant standbys to come back. I think I would only want that for Lich.
Ooh.
And that's why.
Ooh.
Other than that, like, I just don't think it fits.
I dig that. I dig like the spell casting elements of Lich with like you bury it. I mean, it's always been like the necromancy kind of thing, right? Rezard did standbys, and now we have Lich. Like,
honestly, if anybody would do, okay, so here's something.
I'm down. Athena's the standby ruler. Oh yeah, I'm up for it.
So here's something that
harvesting. We harvesting those spells from the standby zone. We planting and harvesting.
You're reaching very far. Anyway.
It's not that. But I plant the card and then I grow it and then I harvest it. It's not
You're
that far
talking
of a
about-
reach.
You're talking about chance standby like you wouldn't do like Loki schemes. I want to see a black blue Loki that sets chance standby cards. I don't want to see stealth. I want to see triggers. I want to see chance do things. I want to see. I want to see.
Yeah, of mischief.
No,
that makes sense.
I want to see orders with triggers.
Oh.
Orders get set face down, and then when the trigger is met, you can like surprise your opponent with the orders. Ooh, that's a cool design space. That'd be very, very cool. It'd be a cool way to bring the idea of a standby back, right? I like that a lot.
And like it'll be flavorful. You're like, oh, I get to play Loki the Trickster God. What does Loki do? Well, you set cards face down. You end your turn, Yugi boy. Your move, and you'll be like, I get to do what?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
Odin
very
is-
cool.
Odin's like the villain who just like smacks you in the face with guns.
The structures tell us we're dual colored. The structures tell us we're dual colored. Babatunde, where did you see that?
It's in the colors.
Hmm.
Odin's deck is black green, but I did see a hint of yellow.
Does it just in the box art? That doesn't necessarily mean he's actually a black green ruler.
It doesn't, but from what's it? History? I think.
Let me take a look at this. I mean, like,
Yeah, that's
that box
an
art.
interesting point.
That box art for Nyarlathotep sure does just look like a red deck. It has a splash of yellow. It has a splash of complementary yellow, but it certainly feels like a red deck.
Jeremy talking about yellow as a complementary color to red. Come on now, son. You went to public school.
Well, I mean, if we got dual stones, I'd be fine, right? Like, I'm not saying
I want to see stones.
we can't.
What I'm hoping. So this is more speculation based on color association because we're going to do that now apparently. Here to discuss it. I do see a tiny bit of yellow on the Odin structure deck, like a tiny hint of it behind Gungnir. So what I'm really hoping is that it's a tricolor ruler.
Stop this.
With a stone that has that produces different colors based on what you do for it. Like base level, it's green.
But if you use it for,
like,
you can
if you
produce. Okay.
If you dealt damage this turn, produce black. If you gained life this turn, produce light.
So
like
situation
a
stones.
World stone.
So situation stones. We got to come up with a catchy name if that's what it is, because all of our stones, all of our the narrative stones.
Yeah.
Narrative stones.
Yeah.
No, doesn't. It's too.
Tri-stones.
The tri-stones.
I mean,
whatever.
if you want an idea to penetrate into the majority of the populace, you got to make it easy to understand
Exactly.
for people to like communicate it effectively.
Yeah.
So tri-stones. There you go.
Yeah,
single stones, dual stones, tri-stones. It just people go there.
Yeah. So I like it. I like everything here. I like the artwork. For this set, we've already seen the box art. I've got that on screen right now, so we're still at 36 count boxes.
How Odin in the arc. I like how Odin in the artwork is just like yelling at nobody, pretty much. He's just like, ah. It's really great. I really love that.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Big thanks to Kodokan because I recognize his art style anywhere, and he's wonderful.
Gear change stones. Gear stones. We just gotta call them. I call them gear stones.
Garian stones.
Gear stones. Gary stones.
Gary stones.
Gary stones. There it is. We found it.
Stones.
We found it. We don't even know what the stones do, but we found it.
Tri-stones.
300 electrons. No, 300 life is so boring. Make us work for it. Make us work for our colors. Come on.
Yeah. So this will be really, really cool. I'm excited to see it. I'm very excited for what all it could mean. I'm very excited for these characters. More yokai. Very close. So like.
Ooh.
Clearly means that we're probably gonna
festival. Let's go, baby.
Pretty. I mean, like, because again, we can link. Kaguya, like I said, is the high god of the yokai spirits, and then Odin is like the Valkyries. We can get very speculative about what kind of archetypes or what kind of like lore we're going to see out of this set, right? So Nyarlathotep is very much the Egyptian, so we'd probably see like Isis and stuff like that return. Nyarlathotep is, or as I just said, Nyarlathotep, Odin is very much the Valkyries, so we can see like Brunhild and that stuff return. We might actually get to finally have our boy Hanzo finally get the justice he deserves of being a resonator. Hanzo is literally just a ruler, and and I understand that he was OP as hell as a ruler. I'm not going to contest that. That man never got the honor of also being a resonator. Bring back justice for Hanzo. Hashtag justice for Hanzo. And then probably more fairy tales. Fairy tale support.
I mean, the Nyarlathotep does say tales. Loki has traditionally been fairy tales. Kaguya has traditionally been a fairy tale.
Yeah.
So, what else we're gonna see? It's just whatever there is. I don't know. Something's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's very cool. We'll probably see. I'll let the community know when we get if and when we get any kind of spoilers here on the channel. And obviously, we'll also post as soon as we can in terms of links for Odyssey's pre-orders. I know we're probably going to try to get them up pretty soon. I'm going to work with Odyssey to see if we can get our pre-orders up even by this weekend's GP, so we can get that started, but we'll have to see. Sometimes it can take a little bit before they actually can get the information up. So, yeah, very, very cool stuff. Cool characters, cool place. And we know that we have another cluster, so we know now that Force of will have at least 4 more sets. I don't think there was. I know that there are naysayers, but I still continue to think that Force of Will's in a position where we're probably never gonna actually get canceled.
Continues to outlive everybody else.
Exactly.
Somehow.
we still here. We still here and we growing. So it's going to be really exciting. Look forward to some just things for this week as we kind of come to our close here. Just as a reminder, we have our feature match on Wednesday. The deck profiles for the feature match this week might be a little bit. One will probably go up on Friday, and then the other one will probably go up on next Monday, because we are not going to have office hours next week, because Paul and I are still going to be on a plane back here to Kalamazoo when we on Monday when we would normally be meeting. And of course, we have the GP this weekend on Saturday and Sunday, thanks to Games and Geek out in Northfield, Minnesota. We are going to be joined by the wonderful Victoria and the wonderful Babatunde as part of our full stream crew. So look forward to what we have have ready for you to really bring the stream into another level here for you this coming weekend. Again, as a reminder, if you want to consider being able to join in the chat for that, as well as get access to all kinds of other perks, you should click that join button right down below this video to become a member here on the channel and start your curriculum here at Ruler School.
Good thoughts, Mr. Ruler Teacher Man.
Yeah, start your curriculum.
Ruler
man. So it's gonna
also,
be really... Go ahead, Paul. Yeah.
Hey, buddy, you're gonna have a yearbook.
Oh yeah, we have a yearbook. Yeah, we're gonna have a yearbook this week.
Final yearbook of this season, and it's one geared more toward like people who are looking to build like beginner decks for other people, or people who are just getting into the game. It's Carlina. How did you know? She has such a long history.
It's not
in this game. She has such a long history in she's a classic character. Like right alongside Grimm. Probably actually more iconic than Grimm.
She was in the official pre-Valhalla cluster.
Yeah. Back she was on the first booster set, so
clearly.
Yeah, clearly. So who are we doing a yearbook on this week, Paul?
So like I said, this is geared toward newer players who are like, how do I figure out how to do this? And it's geared for people who are interested in building decks to bring to their locals or to help start a locals that'll help people understand the mechanics and give people sort of like a path, right?
It's featuring.
So it's the Avatar of Light Magic Stones. Yeah.
That Durgan sure does have some history with Force Will. He was in Bin 3 and then never saw print again.
I've always appreciated this ruler and those sets of rulers. And so I wanted to say, like, okay, what could we do a yearbook with this particular ruler and these sets of rulers that could help newer players or people who are looking to build communities and teach people how to deck build for this game? So you're going to see it. I think you're going to enjoy it, too. I actually had a lot of fun writing this one. It's a little bit different. So it's worth taking the time. Makes you think about how you play the game.
That will be very fun. I'm excited to see it and read it and watch it and enjoy it. But That is it for us for tonight. Thank you all so much for being here and being part of the discussion. The chat has been very lively tonight. I can't wait to see a lot of you who are in the chat this weekend, as well as those of you in person, as well as those of you who could not make it. Hope to see you in the stream. But until next time, this has been myself, DMO73, and I am joined, as always, by Mike Rance.
Thanks, guys. This has been me, DMO73, and I've been joined here by Paul Reisman.
Hey there, guys. Hope you have a great week. This is DMO73, and I'm joined by Jeremy Franklin.
Saying class dismissed. Have a good night, everybody.
Class.